agenda will be for the full group. And that will take us until about 7:15, and then we will jump into an executive session, at which point it will be just the board and the folks from CDI. And so if you want to jump in, we do have an open forum towards the end of the agenda. And if you have questions that are other than the agenda, feel free to open up then and answer those questions that you might have. So on that note, I just say welcome everyone. Glad you could attend. We have lots of folks here, residents, board, Nora and Pat from CDI. And I'm looking to see, I think we have our full board here. I'm pretty sure that we do. Anyway, so welcome everyone. And we do have a special guest coming in tonight from First Choice Property Management. That person is Ryan Wareham, and be coming in under just after the treasurer's report. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Miranda Chung, our board secretary, to review our secretary's report and meeting minutes.
Hi, everyone. All right, so I shared out the minutes from July 11th, last week's meeting, with the board via email. I received some very helpful suggested edits from Janet, as always. Are there any other, which I have incorporated into the notes? Chris W., thanks for sending the transcript from last time. I did fill in those couple of gaps where I had trouble hearing the audio last week. So thanks for that. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We accept the minutes as written.
It's hard on Zoom sometimes to see who got there first, but I saw Tom, I saw you, and Melissa, I heard you. So thank you. Can we vote to approve?
I'm trying to mute it.
Thank you. That's 11 votes to approve the July 11th meeting minutes. I think with that, I'll pass it over to Zach for the treasurer's report.
Hey everyone, update for this week. We have 123 signed memberships and $115 collected.
Zach, do you have a list of those that you don't have money from yet that maybe I could help you locate them or get in touch with them?
Yeah, I was thinking next weekend, everyone that's like either didn't pay or didn't sign. Yeah, I can send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And would anyone like to approve those numbers I just gave?
Motion to approve Zach's report.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the numbers were when they went by, so I can't vote one way or the other.
123 for membership signed and 115 for dollars collected.
Thank you.
All in favor of accepting the treasurer's report? Thank you. Bonnie, I didn't see your vote. I might have missed you when I did a look. Thank you. And when we do approve those secretary and treasurer's reports, just for residents who are attending, those are board votes. So thank you for participating. But I'm primarily looking for board hands in those moments.
All right. Treasurer's report has been approved, And Nora, do you want to discuss anything or introduce Ryan? Ryan is up next on our agenda for first choice, or is Ryan ready to speak?
Sure. Maybe I could give some context and then Pat could give some context because she has clients that work with this company in Maine. And then Ryan, I don't see on the Zoom yet. I told him to plan on coming at 6:15. So we got just a couple minutes here. So just to tee this up, so you are going to interview more than one property management company. This was just the first available. And because this would be a remote option, I thought it would be like helpful, compatible to do it when we're doing a Zoom meeting anyway, so that he's not the only guy on Zoom. So this is a company that's in Rhode Island, and this would be an option that is a remote property management role. So they would work with you to develop a preferred vendor list. So anything that is physical on site is going to have to be handled by a different company. And so they would do basically your bookkeeping, your rent collection, your rules enforcement, vetting incoming applicant tenants, so credit, query check. They would do maintaining a 24/7 emergency line. They're a company and they have a number of resident-owned communities that are already their clients. And then hopefully we'll get at least 2 different companies in front of you to interview as well. Ideally, maybe 3 other candidates, which could be not remote candidates. We have had historically a hard time finding property management options across all 5 of the states we work in, but particularly in Maine. And I'd pass that to Pat because she works with the Maine rocks that exist as of now.
You say that they would collect rents remotely out of state? This is some kind of, we mail it in and hope to God it gets there?
You'd either do, and that's a question, actually, let me not speak for them. You should ask that directly of them. They'll set you up certainly if you want to pay electronically. They have to give you the opportunity to, pay check as well. I see Ryan is in the waiting room, so I do want to just give that Pat a minute to talk, and then Chris, that would be a great question to ask them.
Okay.
And again, I'd stress this is one option. You need to interview more than one. So go for it, Pat.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. So we've been working with First Choice here in Maine for over 2 years now, and we have found them to be a terrific property management company. The rocks that have hired them in Maine work remotely with them. So everything is set up on a remote basis. In Maine, the previous property management that was available in some of the rocks was not terrific. And they didn't offer the robust services that we found First Choice offers. For instance, I'll just share some of the things that I really appreciate about the company is they have an online website, and once a member is registered with them, they can literally go right in online and pay their rent. They offer a charge card payment option, which the previous financial management company could not do. So just in general, I know our Maine rocks are very pleased with their service. The other big bonus and what some boards really appreciated was the 24-hour a day emergency service. So I think that's about it, Nora. And I can let Ryan can fill us in on the others, unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, any last things before I admit Ryan from the waiting room that you'd just like to flag before he comes in?
I think anyone who's going to be property management has to be 24/7. You can't have some weird disaster at 7 o'clock at night and nobody knows about it till 7 or 8 the next morning.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to be a little more hands-on than that.
And Chris, that's one of the things the communities have really appreciated. Here's a phone number you can call in an emergency, so they're not knocking on board members' doors, and that's what used to happen. So it's a much more professional way to run a business.
So I have a question. This company is out of Rhode Island? because there is a First Choice Property Management that's based in Lewiston, and that's who I thought you were talking to.
This is in Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Okay, so there must be two places
Yeah.
that both have
First choice, I would name my company First Choice too. But if First Choice in Lewiston is also interested in interviewing, like there's no, you have a couple months to interview, right? We want to get more candidates, and we know it's a shift to have a remote option, and we don't want people to feel like they got to go with their first pick. So we're going to do our own due diligence and research, and I encourage the board and residents to do some as well, to see if we can find just like a couple different scenarios, and we see their costs, we see what they offer. So with that said, I'll just admit Ryan and hear what he's got to say.
Tell them to propose to us a way that we are saving money by using them.
Yep. Chris, I'm going to let you ask all these questions. You guys are interviewing him, not me.
Is there office on, what was it,
Hi, everyone.
Providence Hill?
Why don't we let him get on and tell us?
So Ryan, the floor is yours. You're on with a mix of board, it says board next to their name,
Yep.
and then membership.
Okay. Were there any questions from the outset, or do you want me to just kind of start from scratch for everyone?
Why don't you start from scratch and then we can jump in
Okay.
as needed, Ryan?
Yeah, no problem. So as some or all of you may know, my name is Ryan from First Choice Property Management here in Rhode Island. I'm the director of finance over here, so I had.
Can you speak louder, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director of finance at First Choice Property Management. So anything numbers related, obviously, would mainly be my wheelhouse, but my hope today is to kind of see what questions you may have, what sort of services you'd be interested in from us at First Choice, and obviously see where we can go from there. Obviously, we work closely with CDI already. I see Pat Schwebler's here with us, and then Nora as well. But basically, our main goal is to be able to help you as a board, and obviously any residents here as well, be able to enjoy the community and kind of assist in running the community as smoothly, efficiently as possible. And if ever there's any issues that come up, we want to be able to help you out and come to a resolution for it, really. So I know that your community is looking for full management, so that goes a little bit beyond just the financial aspect of everything. But for every community, it's a little bit different. So that's kind of why it's good to have these conversations and see what you as a community would need from us in order to provide the best service.
Can you elucidate on how we could save money by not having a footprint here, not maintaining an office, not maintaining anything? You wouldn't have any tools or anything. Is that somehow to our advantage financially?
How do you mean? Is it because we're for remote property management?
Yeah. If it's
So-
remote, do we get a savings out of that because you don't have a physical presence here?
So it would all depend on what you as a community need. Some communities, they like to have an on-site property manager. Some communities don't have that need. What we've found, at least over the last few years, is that the majority of things that can be handled in person can be handled remotely. There's a little bit of crossover between remote and full management, but a lot of the time when you have an active board, most of the boots on the ground stuff is really, the board would be the eyes and ears from us, and then we would handle everything else that the board does not have to take on as their own burden. So what we find is obviously you'll have residents, they might make a complaint if something needs to be addressed. The board might be made aware of that. You would pass that along to us as your management company. And from that point on, your hands are kind of off of that issue, and you're able to just let us handle it from there. Now, if you need somebody who's going to go around the community to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed ahead of time, obviously as the board, you already live there. So you will see things sometimes before you even do those walkarounds. So you would be able to just address things as they come up. and we can then take over from there. So in terms of savings, you're not paying anyone to be there full time. You're just using our services from what we do from our office in Rhode Island, and not having to have somebody always on site for however many hours a week that you might need them for.
So would we be paying somebody full-time to be doing something and then some other people part-time, or how you break it down?
We as a company, you'd be paying us the management fee, but you
Right.
wouldn't be paying an individual staff member on site to go around to look at things. It would
Right.
just be if the board or residents see anything that needs to be addressed, that gets funneled to us as your management company, and then we handle everything from there. So you don't have to have somebody who's physically on site being available for people to walk in and talk about any issues or anything like that. They would just be sent over to us.
I guess I was asking, is there somebody off-site that we're paying full-time that we just assume they're out there doing all our business all the time? Or is it everyone?
It's a team. So it's a team of when you're paying a management company management fee to us, you have multiple people in our bookkeeping department that handle all of the financial aspects, and then you would have a collections manager. You would also have a property manager if that's the service you're looking for, and anything that is sent over to those individual team members would be handled by those people.
And what is the fee percentage that you guys charge?
So it's not usually a percentage. It all depends on the service that you need. And like I said, I know you're looking for full management, but one of the things that we try to pay attention to is the scale of everything you're going to need. Some communities need less, some communities need more. So what I'm hoping to do during this meeting is find out what as a whole you're looking for, and then we would be able to put together a proper proposal and email that out to the board so you can review in your own session.
That'd be good to give us a list of what you consider full
Exactly.
management.
So
Because a
Nora,
lot
did
of days go by here when nobody does anything and there's no need for it. I
right.
don't want to be paying somebody full-time for that.
You're not paying an individual person, you're just paying a yearly management fee.
I know, I get it. You're
Okay.
screaming into your
Well-
microphone. You're screaming.
No, I'm not.
Well, you
Hey,
gotta
guys.
be.
I'm just hardly speaking, actually.
I'll turn mine down. How's that?
Maybe my microphone's too high. Chris, I'll check.
And so I sent over the kind of like menu of what First Choice
Yeah.
offers. So maybe if it's useful, I'll put it on the screen. Would that help, Ryan? And then you can kind of
Yeah,
go through
yeah,
it? Would
that, I
that
can go
be-
through that. I can walk through each one at a time and kind of just, there's a little bit of a blurb under each of the services, but I can give more information if needed.
And maybe for context, if someone wanted to describe on the board, like how, and Ryan, if this is not useful, just say it's not useful, how the community has been managed now. Ryan doesn't have any context on like Kurt or like what you're used to now. So that might be useful to just share like,
Yeah.
this is what we're used to, and then he can say, this is what they do.
Yeah, any information is good information. Does anyone want to take a lead on that?
I'll jump in for a second, Ryan. I think that the basic financial part is what it is.
Okay.
We have a pretty strong board and we have good backup around that.
That's good.
So if you send us financial statements, we know how to read them, or
Yeah.
some of us know how to read them, and we can show the rest of the folks how to read them
Yeah.
and interpret that.
Yeah.
So it's more, doing the collections, posting that. And what do you use for software to track payments?
So we use Rent Manager. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But so Rent Manager, it's a cloud-based software that we use. So the board would actually have access to a board portal. And it's similar to the resident portal where they can log on, make payments, see their transactions in real time. And also if we even close, they can log on, still make a payment. There's no delays. Everything is instant when it comes to making a payment. They post instantly, and they will be able to get receipts for any payments they make, etc. With the board portal, it's something that has to be enabled on a case-by-case basis for each board member. And you would be able to 24/7, whether we're open or not, run your own reports, see any bills that have been entered or paid, see any bill images. If there's a PDF attached, for instance, you'd be able to log in, look at those images, and then see if the bills were paid and what the check number, the date, everything you need to see is available 24/7. Now, of course, if you need to know more details, you could shoot us an email, and then obviously when we're open, we'll give you more information. But it gives you that freedom. If you have a board meeting like for now at 6:30, and someone says, "Well, actually, was that bill paid?" You can go in at that very moment and take a look.
And we can determine the pre-approval process around that.
Yeah, so for again, for every community, it's a little bit different. Some communities, when it's a regular bill like utilities that don't really fluctuate, you would be able to say, okay, we're happy for you to pay those without pre-approval. If it's something like a legal bill, something that's unusual, we reach out to the board generally via email. And what we see works best for most communities is we would send it to a minimum of 2 board members. You would designate who or how. And as long as we get multiple approvals per what you want us to do, we would then pay that bill. So instead of what some communities have done in the past, where we would cut a check with the bill, mail it to the board, and the board would only send it when it's approved, that delays your payments. We
Right.
try and do everything as digital as we can.
Okay, that's the new way of the world, which is
Yeah,
really
yeah,
helpful.
it makes everything easier for everyone.
Okay.
And then going back to the mention of financials, so I would be the one that would be producing the financials. So if you have any questions on those, of course, feel free to ask. But basically, I'm sure you've seen financial statements before. We include the, and we'll get to the part on the services that Nora just put up, but we include the most frequent financial reports you probably see. So you've got your profit and loss for the month that we're reporting, profit and loss for the year to date. And then you'll have your balance sheet, a trial balance, a general ledger. So a general ledger is going to break down everything for anyone that's not already aware. And then you're going to have your receivables, your payables, so showing what bills are outstanding and have been paid. And then also a rent roll for anyone in the community. So you can always see how many residents there are, see what their monthly lot rent, if it's different from everyone. And then finally, what I think most communities love is we provide a copy of all the bills that were paid in that month as well, along with your bank statements and reconciliations. So in every financial packet you receive from us, there's a complete list of everything you could need. And then if ever you need anything else, you just reach out.
So if we're looking for like P&L with budget to actual, you can get
Yeah,
that for us
so
too.
that's in there as well.
And if we want to drill down into detail on that, are we
So
able to do that?
everything for the month is included in the general ledger as well. So you would have a P&L, which gives you a summary, and then the detail is in the GL. If you needed year-to-date GL, that's something we could run separately, or if you have the board portal, you can go in and look at it yourself.
Okay,
All right.
very good.
Ready for some screen share?
Yeah.
Sure.
Services? All right. So tell me if you're able to see this.
All right. So assuming everyone can see the screen share, I'll kind of go point by point, and then Nora, when I get to the end, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down. So the first one, it's quite self-explanatory, but the collections, I know you mentioned that earlier, Janet. So the collections, you have a dedicated accounts manager with First Choice collections manager. So if you choose to go with us, you'll hear the name Sylvia, you'll hear the name Julie. They handle most of the collections for your community. So that's going to be making sure, keeping up on top of any payment plans, making sure anyone is meeting those, and then just regularly updating the board. If anyone has a balance, you will get automated reports to show you the balance weekly. Now, when it comes to the actual receiving and processing of those payments, that happens in the bookkeeping department. So that would be myself, my colleague Samantha, my colleague Deborah. So you have 3 people in case anyone's out, things don't halt. You always have moving services. The online portal I touched on already, but basically anyone can log on, make payments, that kind of thing, manage their own automatic payments. So it can draft it from their account automatically every month. And then the same thing, we'll get onto the board portal after. Accounts payable, again, touched on it, but basically any bills for your community, regular expenses and unusual expenses, they would be sent to us or received directly by us. We'd process those according to whether or not you have approval, however you want to handle that. And then obviously if anything ever looks odd, we'd reach out to the board and say, like, we've received this bill, we're not sure if it should be paid, please let us know. Board portal, like I said, 24/7, you have access to the reports, access to copies of the bills. And again, if ever you need something that isn't inherently available in the board portal, you can always ask us, say, hey, can I get a customer contact list, for example, that you might not be able to run yourself? We would be able to generate that and send it to you.
Quick question, Ryan. How do we go about signing checks for vendors?
So that's something that you would want to, it kind of as the approval process. Usually our clients are set up within the bank with us. So we would be a master signatory on all checks and we would process those as normal. So we just send them directly from our office, signed, ready to go. Now, if you wanted to sign your own checks, it's something you could do, but professionally, I'd recommend against it just because it delays the process. So let's say, for instance, you get a bill that's due in 7 days, for example. We would have to receive, process, and pay that bill, mail you the check, mail you the check with a prepaid envelope for you to then mail it to the vendor. By the time you've got to that point, you've probably passed those 7 days, and that's technically late. So what we have found over the years is that having everything come directly from our office alleviates a lot of time delays. If it's something that you want a specific dollar amount,
Mhm.
then we could probably do that, no problem. But for regular operating bills, I'd avoid that as much as you can, just to give you that kind of information.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anything over X number of dollars, we'd want to.
And it can even, instead of signing the checks physically, you also, with the board portal, you have the option for us to enable owner approval, is what we call it. And basically you as a board can go in and approve those bills, and we wouldn't pay those bills until you approve them. So if you wanted to do it that way, it still comes from the central location, still doesn't have any delays of the mail twice, which I'm sure everyone's noticed the mail's been pretty bad recently. If you avoid it going into the mail more than once, that's probably a good idea. And then the other thing is, with our existing technologies that we have, we use a third-party company called Avid Exchange for a lot of our payments. And what they do is it actually allows vendors to be paid in electronic means, not just paper check. So if they want to receive payments as a credit card, like a virtual credit card, or they want direct deposit, they can set that up through the third party that we use, and there is no paper check to wait for in the mail. So we have quite a few different ways of getting around the delays that we've seen.
That's super helpful with like utilities and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And a lot of where we can with utilities, we try and log on and make payments online wherever possible, just because it speeds everything up. It really does. But I'm sure there'll be more questions, and we'll obviously address them as needed. So the community notices, again, if ever you have an annual meeting notice, for example, or if you have just a regular notice you just want to go out to everyone, we employ blast text messages, blast emails, and also mailings by paper mail if needed. A lot of the time, obviously, that you would reserve that for something where you have to mail it out because they come at an expense. Postage isn't cheap these days and it keeps going up. But if ever you needed a physical mailing, we could obviously handle that for you. And even if you just need an email to go out to all your residents, we could do that easily and no charge. So violation letters are the same thing. If there's any violations that we are made aware of, either through a resident or through a board member, we're able to prepare those violation letters, mail those out, follow up on those violations, and also make sure that they get addressed. And then lastly, the financial reporting we touched on, but basically includes those reports that you have listed in there. And any questions when we send them out, of course, you can ask. Budget analysis and preparation. We work with the board and the TAs where we're involved with preparing a budget and also getting that budget approved by any lenders that may be involved in the community. And obviously it comes down to making sure you have vendor contracts on file, making sure those are updated when they're expiring, and then updating your budget based on any increases or decreases in those contracts. board members and annual meetings just like this. It would be attending board meetings as needed. Usually there's a limit in the contract. It's generally between 2 and 4, depending on what the necessary amount for your community is. And then the annual meeting as well, being able to join such as this or via teleconference to be part of the annual meetings. Engaging with a CPA, I don't know if you've ever had to do that as a community yet. Obviously, you're still going through the process, but generally what we see is you would have a CPA that you engage with. They would designate the list of services you need, whether it's an audit, a financial review, a compilation, or just tax returns, depending on your level needed. And usually that's designated by your lender, what they require. We would work between ourselves as your financial record keeper and then them as your CPA, and we provide them all the information they need in order to complete those services. And of course, if there's anything required from the board, whether it's a list of your current board members, meeting minutes, that kind of stuff, we'd help you arrange getting all of that information to the CPA. Contractor bids, it's always recommended to get a minimum of 2 or 3 bids. Sometimes it's even in your procurement policy if you have one, but it's going to be helping you and taking care of finding different vendors for snow, trash, that kind of stuff, getting multiple bids, making sure you're having the most competitive bids, but also the services that best meet your community. And then once you agree on it, those contracts would be signed. And obviously, like I said earlier, keeping up on those, making sure they're renewed when needed, and shopping around if needed.
You also keep track of, Ryan, the like W-9s and the
Yes.
certificates of
So
insurance?
in our bookkeeping department, and in Rent Manager, we have a list of all of the vendors. We keep track of any insurances, whether it's workers' comp or general liability. And then we request any certificates that have expired. We have a system where everything comes up if it's expiring. W-9s are kept on file. And at the end of the year, we'll get to that bit in a little bit, but at the end of the year, 1099 filings where needed. Project management, it's something that's only really needed if it's needed, but we list it anyway. So if there's ever any large project that you would need us to go above and beyond regular property management, it's something that we would basically be the designated project manager overseeing a much larger scale project. Sometimes you'll have an external third-party consultant. Sometimes you would just need us to do it. But that's something that we can do, and that's something that does come at an extra charge, but we list it in here because it's something we can offer. The next thing is the on-call service. So we have a 24/7 on-call phone number. So even if we are closed and someone has an emergency, water main break, something like that, they would call the on-call service. On-call would call the maintenance department, and we would have a list of preferred vendors for your community to address things like water main breaks, any general issues that might come up, and know who to contact to get that addressed, even out of hours.
Chris?
Which Chris?
We're not hearing you.
Yeah, we're
Chris, Chris Wilkins has a question, but your audio isn't working, Chris.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect.
So where are the closest to us responders? Where would these people be dispatched from?
In terms of vendors?
Yes. So if we
so-
have that water emergency,
Yeah, so
do you
that's
have plumbers in the Brunswick area? Do you have electricians in the Brunswick area in your network?
yeah, so we currently manage a community, I believe, very close to you already. So a lot of the vendors you would probably need are already in service in that area. Now, if you didn't want to use those same vendors, you can find any number of electricians, plumbers, that kind of thing. We would have a preferred vendor list for each community depending on what you need. And of course, if for some reason you didn't want to use vendor A, we would find different vendors for that service and be able to have someone local to you. In terms of exact timing, that would be determined on which vendor you're using. But we always make sure to have people local enough to respond in a timely manner. And basically, we would work with the board to make sure we have that list of relevant people. Now, in terms of the 1099 filings we touched on, so any vendors, I don't know if you need the specifics, but basically any vendors that are eligible to get 1099, we keep a track of those throughout the year, and obviously track how much was paid to them throughout that year, and then file those on your behalf. That is an additional charge for the actual filing, but not the time that we take to do it. It's just the actual filing cost. So we bill that back to the associations. Now, that's only determined by how many vendors you use that are not incorporated. If they're incorporated, you don't have to file, but we keep track of that as well. That's just something we do as part of just overseeing your regular payables. Payroll, if you end up having an actual employee on site for any reason, we're able to run that payroll and obviously make sure that that employee gets paid the way they're supposed to. We currently do that for a number of communities, and that's something we can offer if you get to that point. I don't know if you will or not. And then finally, credit and background checks. It's part of the screening process when you have residents buying and selling. So I believe you'll probably have it as a requirement in your rules and bylaws, but we run the screening, and depending on if the board or the community needs those reports to go to the board for review, they would. Some communities do not see the actual reports, and they just get a recommendation of whether to accept or deny. It depends on your bylaws, and your TA would know better, or you may even know yourself. But we run those, and we have the pricing there, which basically you as a community would pay us to run the screening, but the residents coming in being screened would pay you for the same amount. So it flows through you, but it's not really an expense to you.
Right, it's a wash.
Right, Ryan, quick question about the payroll. I'm assuming that you process payroll taxes, quarterly taxes and that sort of thing and issue
Yep.
W-2s.
Yeah, so we would probably use a company like ADP, for example. So they would take care of all of your regular tax filings, year end, that sort of stuff. And that, again, it would be linked to your account. It would be your payroll account, and it would just flow through your operating account as normal.
Anyone have any other questions?
I see some in the chat. Let me just quickly take a look.
Okay.
I never found it.
It looks like Tom also has a question as well.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. My quick question is just that your company that wouldn't be setting up new homes and the lots for new homes, right?
Not ourselves, no.
But you have vendors for that?
So we, and through CDI, you can look for infill people. So a lot of the time there'll be vendors you can work with to fill vacant lots. We don't particularly do it ourselves, but we can work with them to arrange the account setups and that sort of thing. But in terms of finding homes and filling those homes, that's something Nora and Pat
No.
might be more information on.
Yeah, no, I really meant setting them up, but
What's that, sorry?
I really meant like who would do work that sets them up, like connects all the stuff and when they get this delivered.
Oh, so that would be local vendors to you. So obviously you would have water hookups and stuff like that. That's something that kind of gets done in that process. So you would already have someone that knows the community or goes to the community to handle those things. But we can work with that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And then I saw there's a message in the chat from Linda, so I'm just quickly reading that. So yes, so the bank statements, if the bank that we use, we can have board access to see those statements, view access to the entire bank accounts if that's something you desire. But what we also do in the financial packets, the bank statements are included with the financials for every account that you have. So let's say you have 5 or 6 different bank accounts, every bank statement relevant to that month is in the financials. And we also include the reconciliation for those accounts. So you would see any transactions that cleared, any that are uncleared, and then any difference between the reconciliation, which every month is going to be 0 because we don't reconcile if something doesn't add up. So whenever we reconcile, we always make sure everything gets investigated. If there's a check that didn't clear, for example, or a payment that may have been misposted, we always find those issues, fix them before running the financials. and then provide the complete package to the board. No problem. Are there any other questions that you can think of?
I have a question about the residents making their monthly payments.
Okay.
I notice we have an office here that we walk to, and people also have a mailbox and they put checks in there. We get a discount if we pay within the first 5 days.
Okay.
Now, some people are maybe going to still want to do that as opposed to having a bank payment. And I kind of have two questions. How would you address that? People still want to do physical checks. And two, if we pay by bank or credit card, is there going to be a fee for that would add on to our monthly payment?
So I'll answer the first question first, and I'm gonna ask Nora and Pat to step in. Will the discount be continuing when the community gets acquired? Because I know some park owners offer that, but as resident-owned communities, I don't see many that do.
I think
I'm sorry,
that's a
say that
question.
again.
So the question Ryan's asking, because the board, you had let me know that there's a discount if you pay within a certain first 5 days of the month, correct? So I think we'll have to talk about that once we get closer to the final budget and the final rent amount for people to make a decision on. My thought, just as of the top of my head, is it's kind of, they would be giving themselves a discount and they need to pay their bills. So I think we'll just need to explore whether that's possible. It's not
Right.
like a park owner giving the residents a discount. It's, if you won't be right. So that's kind of where we run into some of the ways it's different. And that's why most resident-owned communities, all to my knowledge, don't have anything that's comparable.
Right. That's kind of what I thought. So then the second question, and then I guess I should say, if it is approved, yes, we can do that. I guess I should say. Now for the second question, we have the online portal. You have the option of credit card, debit card, ACH. Now ACH is basically checking account or savings account, and you use your routing number, etc.
Yeah.
If you pay by checking account or savings account through ACH, there is no convenience fee, and we absorb the fees for that as the management company. If you pay by credit card or debit card, the processor does charge a convenience fee, but you don't have to pay by those options if you don't want to. But if for some reason someone really needed to make a payment on a credit card as a one-time thing, I believe it's 3.5% that the processor charges, which is about normal. They have that choice to use a card if they desire. Now, like I said, they can still use checking account routing number. That sort of stuff is completely free and is preferred, really, because it makes sure you get everything processed quickly. Now, if they want to do paper checks, back to your question about the local office,
Right. Yeah.
they can mail the checks to us, and there's no charge for paper checks. We would process those in-house in the office. We have encrypted bank scanners, so they go directly to the bank. We don't have to make deposit slips and run them to the bank or anything like that. It's all done in-house. And then when it comes to the payments being dropped off at the local lockbox, if you have one, it's something that not many communities do, but some do. And what will usually happen is you would have a person or multiple people in charge of collecting those and mailing them to our office as one envelope of all the checks. Usually, I would say to recommend people just to mail their own checks individually to our office instead of having a bunch sit in a box. Because if, say, 10 people leave their check there, the person who usually does it goes on vacation, you have 7 to 10, 20 checks that are just sitting in a box. And we don't know they paid, you don't know they paid. So it's better if they just mail them directly to us or pay online.
Gotcha. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat, Janet.
I was-
I actually see 2. Okay.
I was just looking at that from Linda.
Okay, let me read.
It's regarding personal liability for payroll taxes.
Correct.
I've never heard of that before. I would think that we'd be covered under the business.
So usually with payroll, when you use a company like ADP, they would through the state that you're making payments in, they would determine your payroll liability for business tax and any other taxes that may come from that. So usually when you use that's why I would recommend using a company like ADP. You pay them to make sure it's done right. So if there is a tax on employees, which I'm pretty sure there will be, that would all be handled through ADP, and they would file those correct business tax forms at the end of the year, payroll forms. So that I don't see being an issue. But of course, if you did have an employee and you wanted to explore what ADP or another payroll company would do for you, you would just want to discuss that directly with the company before you hire an employee. That's what I'd recommend. But we do have a couple of communities that we manage that have employees, and we run all their payroll through ADP, and there's never been an issue. And that's for a community in New Hampshire, a community in Massachusetts, and I believe another one somewhere else. So I don't see it being an issue, but that's the best answer I have for that question at this time. And then
I can jump in on that a little bit too, Ryan. I've used a number of different payroll services in my career, and you know, every one of them has made mistakes, but I think that, you know, for the most part, they're responsible for that. And if there's any, you know, back and forth with the IRS, you know, we may ask our CPA to jump in.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing is, if for any reason, let's say the tax rate changes mid-year, sometimes you'll get a supplemental invoice at the end of the year and you just pay the difference. So that's taken care of a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's usually state unemployment.
Yeah. And then, so if checks were mailed ahead. So it is something we can do. I'm seeing Melissa's question about holding checks. We recommend people not post date checks only because it's something that we cannot guarantee that a check that's dated 2 days ahead will not be cashed. Now, if someone were to make a payment ahead and it's dated today's date, it would be processed and held as a credit until the month that they owe. If they post date check, we do try to catch any that people post date, because some people like to send 6 checks, but they don't want them all to clear. It's something we try to do, but I will be honest and say we can't guarantee it. We usually recommend people don't post date checks because it just becomes a logistical nightmare. But as much as we can avoid it, we do try our best.
What
It
I've been
seems-
doing since I lived here is I pay once at the end of December, start of January, I pay all 12 months in one check.
Yeah, so what would happen is if you pay the whole year up front, on our system, when we record the payment, it leaves a credit. So let's say, I'm just giving round numbers because I don't know the lot rent. Let's say it was $1,000. I know it's not, but let's say it was, you paid $12,000 up front. January invoice would post, you would be left with a credit of 11,000. Then February would post on February 1st, you'd be left 10,000, and every month it would use that credit until the end of the year when you go back to zero. And then you pay again for the year ahead, and you would just keep having that credit sat on your account until it's all used up.
Ryan, I just want to swing back to Melissa's question for a minute. Wouldn't it make most sense in a situation like that where we wanted to be in charge of, like, when our payments hit, to go online and
Yes.
post our payments ourselves?
Yeah, so when you want to use the online portal, let's say you want to make a payment ahead, you can obviously use the auto pay feature that we have to set it to only pay your lot rent on the 10th of the month, for example. If you wanted to pay ahead, you could set it to the 28th of the month prior, and you have full control. Once you create an account and put your account information in, we do not see that information. We cannot access that information. So a lot of people might call and say, can you make my payment for me? No, we cannot. But they have full control. Now, if they do want to make a payment ahead of time, they still can, but it's just a payment that will process and be left as a credit.
It looks like Ernie's got a question for you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if when we're setting up auto payment.
Yep.
It's kind of a personal preference with me. I would much rather give my bank the information to send the check to than give some third-party company my bank information.
Yeah, so what you're describing is bill pay. So bill pay is still an option, just as if you were writing your own check. You would provide our office address to your bank, and they would mail a check on your behalf. So
Okay.
bill pay is exactly the same as you personally writing a check, but they will debit your account on the day that you make the check out. So if you set it for the 10th, they'll take the money on the 10th, sometimes a day or two before. But we will receive that check on the 10th of the month, USPS permitting, and we would process that as normal. So if you want to do it through your own bank, it's completely fine. You would just give them our office address and they would mail the check directly to us.
Okay, so okay, you can handle options like that.
Yep. Yeah. So handling regular money orders, if they want to send money orders, if they want to send personal checks, bill pay checks, online payments, as much as we can give options for people to make payments, we try our best to give them all.
Ryan, I'm going to jump in here. We've got a time check because we've got a number of other agenda items to address. So thank you very much for your time, for jumping in with us and answering our questions. And we will circle back with you. And so folks, if you have other questions for First Choice, please gather them together. You can send them to us, the board, or board members. We can all discuss this. We're going to be vetting other vendors so we can proceed in that manner. So thank you again, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So next up on our agenda, there were some questions about income surveys, and just looking at the residents, does anyone have any other questions about that? There was a question brought forth at a recent meeting, and there was some concerns about why we were doing income surveys. So just looking around to see if there are any questions on that, or if everyone is comfortable in understanding of what the need is in the process. Celeste?
I have never received the income survey.
We'll get one to you.
Thank you.
That's so, okay. Maybe you and I should connect. I put that in the mail, but okay, I'll figure that out. I hope I didn't screw it up again. And maybe if it's helpful, so I'll make sure that Celeste gets one, absolutely. And then to just get a sense of how many we've collected so far, we've collected 113. That's what the office manager has reported receiving to the PO box.
Okay.
What was the date we wanted those back, Nora?
We just got to we have to hit 75%. So we really just got to keep it rolling. So
Okay.
If you're 277, so 113 of 277. So you're at 40%, which is not negligible given when they went out, but
Right.
we've got a little bit of a ways to go.
Okay.
And I think if people are feeling concerned, I just think the message, I really just want to like reiterate every meeting in case someone's come into this meeting and they haven't been in a while, that really what we care about is income. If someone's uncomfortable or uninterested in filling out the ethnicity stuff, we don't care about that, just to be honest. What we really care about is the income stuff. And the reason being, it's to go after those lower cost funds and those grant funds where available, because the type of money that we're gonna get the best rate on comes from Community Reinvestment Act dollars through banks, which I'll let Pat just hit on for a minute. And then also we're trying to access, we're hoping to go after that, pot of that $5 million Governor Mills set aside. And they're going to want to say, who is this serving, right? Like, who is in this community? What's the affordability need? And if people are over 80% of the area median income, no problem. All data is good data. We just need to give a picture, right? So we don't want any more information. We don't need the ethnicity or any of the other questions, but really it's income, income, income. So we can really try and get the best rates available and grant options available.
And you want to reiterate that this is completely anonymous. The board doesn't see it. CDI staff doesn't see it. It's all just dumped into a database.
Well, I'll say that CDI processes it. So the office manager processes it. Yeah, but splitting hairs. And it's shredded, so we don't retain it, just.
I have a question. Are there any other questions about the income survey, or does anyone need to jump in? Is Lynn Wells, do you have a question, Lynn?
No.
Okay.
I understand the reasoning.
Okay. No, it comes up if there's any noise on your screen, it puts a little yellow box around you. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Nora, did we talk about moving vendor research to a later time? Or was that just in one of my dreams because I eat, sleep, and dream about this stuff now?
You had just emailed me to put it on the agenda, but we can push it off. We're kind of
I'm
running
just,
up a,
yeah, I'm kind of worried about the timing. So, do you want us just move forward with the broker visit to talk about the 6 Kent and one office place? And Eric did come forward and give us the information that we needed. I don't know if you saw my text, but the 6 Kent was missing. And Miranda, did you see my email? I was struggling to get it into the Google Docs, and I sent you an email with a document. I was asking, pretty
Got
please,
it.
if
I didn't see that email. I was in the notes, but
okay,
I can drop that
all right. So,
document.
do you want to just start with one office place then, Nora? Or
yeah, and we could see this as part one of the conversation. You're not going to reach a decision tonight.
right.
You don't need to. So if it sounds, okay to the board, I'll just recap and then we could just put it on next week's agenda as well, if that sounds good. But so to recap, and then Janet and Pat jump in wherever, because you were both involved at every step of this process, is you're buying two, what's called, site build or stick build homes, one office and 6 Kent. And so there's a number of scenarios of what you can do there. And at the end of the day, the decision making is not a CDI decision, it's a membership decision. So the membership is it's not even a board decision, right? It's a membership decision. So the board is kind of basically, you can't make that decision without some sense of numbers. That's the theme throughout this whole process. So Janet hooked a local realtor into the equation here, Eric Landry, did I say his last name right? Who, as I understand it, is very active in Brunswick, knows the community well, sold Janet her home in the community, if I got that right.
Yes.
And he came and did a walkthrough visit to both properties on Friday. And he put together, and I'm going to screen share, basically a broker's price opinion of one office place. He also put together a price opinion of 6 Kent Street, which, as Janet just indicated, he actually didn't send to us for today. So we have to talk about that next week anyway. But
No, we do have it now, Nora.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
I misunderstood that.
He sent it
So-
in at the last hurrah. It wasn't there earlier. And
Okay.
I asked Miranda if she could plug it into the Google Docs or Google file.
So the gist of it is that he looked at comps, right? Side-by-side comparisons with comparable amounts of bedrooms and bathrooms and acreage or square foot, and how recently they had sold. So these two of them sold within the last, February and May. One isn't active on the market. And I'll pull up a map. So let me scroll up to find the map, which is definitely here somewhere, I believe.
I think it was the second page.
Yep. So trying to focus like right in your area, right? At these, larger single family homes. And I'm probably not gonna, I'm actually just gonna take this off screen. This is in the Google Drive folder, but the summary essentially, so this is for the sell scenario, right? You have a sell it scenario and you have a rent it scenario, or you have a keep it yourself and just use it as an office or in a woodshed and a this, that, and the other. So and again, I'm just talking one office place. So Eric's opinion, when he looked at these comparable properties that I just kind of scrolled through, was that, on the highest end, with the 4-bedroom and the 3-bath on 2 Julius Way that sold, just the other month, that came in at 1.275 million. Very expensive piece of real estate. On the slightly lower, which is kind of, crazy to call it that, but, also a 4-bed, 4-bath that sold within this year within a very tight radius of your property. 1 Magnolia Lane, that sold for $775,000. So those benchmarks or guardrails, 775, 1.275 million. But of course, those properties are not abutting a manufactured housing community. So Eric, in his opinion, and obviously, you know, he knows the local market. He, at the end of the day, if I had to wager why he did this pro bono, like do this broker's price opinion, it's because he wants to be the listing broker. He wants to sell those homes. It's in his interest to be real. It's in his interest to be realistic about what price he thinks he can capture for those properties. If you decide as a community to sell it, his estimate is in the $800,000 to $900,000 range. Again, he might be overly optimistic. I have had brokers be overly optimistic when they're trying to sell single family homes that abut manufactured housing communities. In his opinion, and if you want, he can come tell it to you himself, that the fact that the meters are in the basement, the water meters, he doesn't see that really as a deterrent. He says you can read those meters electronically anyway. We can work it out in the, you know, in the paperwork and in the deeds that, you know, there needs to be some limited access, but the fact is they're read electronically anyway. He said the fact that the eye line is right to basically, as Pat referred it, over the kingdom the Scarponis built, he said put up trees. Put trees up, you know, I don't see that as a problem. Whether you agree or disagree with him is your choice. The idea here is to get you this information. So that's just one scenario for it. If you rented it and you said, we want to hold on to it, we don't want to sell it off. He was saying he would see rent in like the $300 to $3,500 range, but it would require some rehabilitation and contracting and possibly even a rezoning to have it be set up as apartments. You are zoned in a GR4 district, and just pulling that up, it's intended for residential uses at a maximum density of 6 dwelling units per acre. Limited non-residential uses are allowed as conditional uses while maintaining the character of the established neighborhood. So there is sort of the rent option. You could capture rent, but you have the cost and liability of first converting those units and then maintaining them. You'd be responsible if the boiler goes or the, you know, something in the kitchen goes, what have you. The sell option obviously presents the challenge of maybe this guy's being, you know, very hopeful. Maybe someone doesn't want to buy something looking at a manufactured housing community. Maybe someone's going to say 4-bedroom, 4-bath right next to the high school on a main road right from town center. I do think that's attractive. So those are the kind of options there. Before we go to 6 Kent, either Janet or Pat, as you are both involved at every stage of this, what do you think? Did I miss anything? Do you have anything to add?
I'll jump in for a second, and then I'm sure Pat has, you know, from a more professional level. Personally, I don't know that I would want to pay $800,000 to look over the kingdom. I feel like there's not enough open space there. There's a small lawn in the front. There's a mobile home that's right next door, if you're facing the building to the right, and then there's mobile homes right behind, and then, as you know, the road there. The other thing with this property is that it's dated. You know, everything in there is dated. There's, you know, it's a beautiful home in its day, in its heyday. You know, it's lovely. There's, you know, lots of space there. There's some really cool places, like a pool table way down in the basement that could be a fallout shelter. I mean, there's some really cool, you know, features to it, fireplace and big entertainment room upstairs. But as Nora said, if we were going to rent the whole house, that's one thing. If we were going to try and rent it out as apartments, there would be a whole lot of work to do. And do we want to do that? Personally, I would not. To get contractors in and all of that just seems like way beyond what the scope of the work is, more than I would want to take on. So on that note, I'm going to leave it over to Pat to see what she'd like to share with us.
Just piggyback on what you said a little bit, Janet. It is a very unique property, and it will, if you all as members decide to put it on the market, it will take a unique buyer for that dollar amount. And Nora put in the chat, you could always get a second opinion, and that might not be a bad idea. So there's some challenges, but it is very unique. Sometimes in real estate, you get that special buyer. That's exactly what they're looking for.
So let's also talk a little bit about the benefit to the cooperative if we were to sell or if we were to rent. Let's start with Nora, like what you feel looking at the numbers, because we've talked about this, how that would affect our rent for tenants if we sold it outright.
If you sold, I mean, this is once we get a little bit drilled down into finalized operating numbers and reports back from the engineers that will tell you what projects that we don't even know about yet that infrastructure wise you're going to need to take on. If it sells for,
well, I wasn't looking for an exact rent number. I was looking for what the variable would be, like how much savings there would be.
It would save, you would basically reduce, part of your financing stack would then be sale of home. So it would have an impact lowering the rent, right? It could be in the range of $20 less, $25 less per home. It's not like $50 to $70 less is what I would expect, but everything counts. Right. And we won't know. It could have a little bit more of an impact. We need to drill down, right? And if you rent it, you would have less of if I'm just kind of like mapping right now, you'd have less of a day one impact, but you would have, that ongoing impact where, probably would be less right out the gate, but you have an asset. The con though is that you would have to increase your repairs and maintenance expense line item. You need to budget more in your repairs and maintenance because those tenants, they're not homeowners. They could come to you at any point with, health, safety, code, anything, same way as I'm sure anyone who's worked in property management, you just have to budget more and potentially spend more upfront, so one is more short-term impact, one is maybe more long-term impact. It ultimately is your decision. Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, I want to echo Melissa in the chat that I think it would be a far better use as a community space. It would still require some renovation, but certainly a lot less than turning it into actual apartments or homes. If I think that whole first floor and second floor could be opened up real easy, and then we have two huge spaces that we could rent out for functions and use for our community functions. Because right now there's really no place for us to gather, and I don't think everybody wants to keep going to the high school forever. I think that could be a better central point.
I think if you were going, sorry.
Oh no, go for it, Celeste.
If you were going to use it for community functions, do you mean to the general public? We would have to have, the state of Maine would probably have to come in and inspect it, and they have their own rules and things they require. Is that a correct assumption?
I think so, and probably the
That's
town
what
as
my
well.
thinking. Yeah.
And it would increase our liability insurance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Potentially. I know every time I try to rent a function space, they want me to bring my own liability insurance. So.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
well, they all want insurance, but doesn't mean they don't have their own. Or don't have to have their own.
yeah, so I think there are some good things being brought up in the chat. I just want to flag, this is like part one of
Right.
15 that we're think it over, talk with your neighbors. There's pros and cons in both categories. This is a vote that would happen at the end of this process, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down really to a financial decision about whether it makes more, if I have to imagine, but I want to make sure we have really strong numbers for you to make a decision on. So at that same time, when we're all coming together at the middle to end of August, one of the votes you'll take in that meeting is, okay, what do we as a community want to do for these properties? And then how is that going to impact our rent? And then let's have people vote yay or nay on this rent and this purchase. For 6 Kent Street, just to pivot, and then I'll definitely put it on next week's agenda. 6 Kent Street makes much, and his opinion in this, again, Janet and Pat just cut me off with anything I forget. His opinion is it does not make sense to sell that for obvious reasons. It's smack dab in the middle of the community. It's you would basically, it'd be land lease, it'd be like a 99-year lease, which you can get traditional mortgage financing for residential purchase on, but it's complicated and it's, you know, he was saying that he could see like 180K for a sale of 6 Kent Street, which, you know, you're gonna have to wanna market to someone who wants to live in a manufactured housing community, but has the upkeep of this stick-built house. That, he said, one option could be a much better office, you know, smaller scale rental space. He said that the rent that's being charged there now, which is 1,100, is below market. And there's a relationship between that resident and the park owner, which is, you know, he's like, that's probably why it's below market. He was thinking something more in the range of $1,800 would be, he said that would be a considerate rent for 6 Kent Street. Because you have the low speed limit, you have the safety of the community, you have the yard, you have the scale of the house. It's not attached to anything, so it's, you know, has all those advantages in rental and wouldn't need the types of work up front that a one office place would, because it's already a rental. So you have, you know, and that's kind of like maybe what we could cover today and just make sure we take it up next week. And if I get an indication from the board that you want to get a second opinion, we can make sure to coordinate that, even if it's just a second opinion on one office place. Let's see how, you know, how optimistic Eric was, and maybe we get someone else that's way different, and then you can have even more. Again, we're fact finding, right? You'll have even more information at that point.
How much did you say he thought we could get for rent?
1,800.
Okay.
And right now it's 1,100.
I wouldn't pay 1,800. I've been in there for quite a bit, and I wouldn't feel comfortable charging 1,800.
I wouldn't either. If we got a decent long-term tenant, somebody who's gone in there, and we gave them a good deal, gave it to them for like 1,200 a month, and they stayed on, I think that'd be a far better deal than to screw around.
There's a
with-
tenant in there now, isn't there?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
I wouldn't raise the rent on the current tenant any more than an equivalent percentage to what our own rent goes up.
agreed.
That's a good idea, Ernie.
I had a different group that was doing a similar renting a stick built, and they had the complete opposite take. They said, yank that rent up as far as we could get it. So every group is different. It's ultimately your call. You would be the owner, so.
Well, I'm sure they have a current lease anyway, and wouldn't we want to honor it and not up their rent until that expired?
It's a month to month.
It kind of just
Okay.
feels like it's counter to the point of this whole thing. If we try to exploit the person
Right.
that we can exploit,
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm opposed to exploiting somebody to the point where they're giving blood. To be honest with you, I just don't want to be part of that at all.
Right.
Agreed, Chris.
Okay, I think we're done with this topic for now, and something to think about. And it looks as though at this point, as Nora said, we will vote on that further on down the road before we close. And so far, it looks like we would probably like to continue renting 6 Kent, and that we would look further into selling possibly one office, or to renting, to see what our options are around that.
Could
So-
we continue to discuss that when we have a meeting of just the board and we're not trying to all talk on microphones where nobody can hear each other? Can we have a meeting like we did at the end of last week? We were all just sitting around in a circle and talk about One Park Place, what we really realistically want to do and for how much. I found that
Absolutely.
worked better. People sitting there face to face, talking, you can hear everybody.
Yep, I think that's a great idea, Chris.
Thank you.
Nora, do you want to jump in? You mentioned an update on inspections.
So, yes, so tomorrow, and Chris, did I tell you this? Tomorrow, there's gonna be an engineer coming at 10 a.m. Did I tell you that, Chris?
Somebody sent me an email.
That's for the future. So tomorrow is gonna be best engineering. This is the sort of like 3,000 feet up, like, you know, view of the property engineering. I've coordinated with Kurt and Kurt's broker Dot, and I'm hoping, Chris, as maintenance director, you're available. If one other director is also available, all the better.
What was that,
They're gonna,
9
I'm
gonna
off
be here?
tomorrow.
you're off, Melissa, you're
It's my
in.
birthday too, so it'll be
Oh,
a great
no.
present. Yeah,
Well,
why not?
okay,
Why
if
not?
that's how you want to.
What a gift.
I'm around
Yeah.
most of tomorrow. I'm around pretty much tomorrow.
I do think we want to limit, not because anyone's better than anyone else at doing this, but just
That's
I
great.
think the vendor's gonna get overwhelmed. And he's, I don't know the guy personally. I've talked to him on the phone. He seems like he's very laser focused. He's like, he barely even wanted the seller there, but the seller obviously is of the opinion like I'm there, you know, so we gotta honor that. But this is gonna be, it's not gonna be a long visit. And he's also gonna do a visual inspection for the first component of the environmental report, a phase 1. So that's the one update, 10 a.m. tomorrow.
That's
Chris,
10.
yeah,
Where are they meeting, Nora, at one office place?
at one office, yep.
Okay, so at 10 at one office place.
Yep, just pulled up my.
Because
yep,
I
Kurt.
thought he said 10 to 4, so I mean, it sounded like more of an all-day thing.
So Chris, that's the second visit. So you're on the ball, but for the second visit. So tomorrow is
Okay.
the first engineering company, and that's
Okay.
Best Engineering. And a part of their work is also environmental in scope. The second visit is gonna come, which is what Chris is talking about. That's Du Bois and King. That's the guy that was in person last week. That's
Right.
the septic, and that's the drinking water guy.
And
That's
that's on
gonna
the
be.
first.
So the seller's broker called me, and she's got some personal stuff that is on the first and second. So she's asking that I try and move it with that company. I'm gonna do my darndest, but you know, we're just gonna have to see what's possible. So it's possible, Chris, that date could change. It could come up a week. I don't want to push it back a week because time is of the essence. So I'll just keep you posted, and that will be a little bit more. It will be more time, time intensive. I think it'll be a little bit more. Like I think there could be some very limited, maybe excavation if necessary. So yeah, that's the update about those two things about the.
Try to avoid the 25th.
No, to the 25th? That was the
My
other
car's
option.
My car's gonna be in the garage all day.
Okay, I'll consider that. Okay. So no to the 25th. Okay, 24th?
If possible. Yeah, I'm good the other days. I'm wide open the next 2 weeks, except the 25th. I got big doings.
Okay, I'll figure that out for you. Tom, I think I saw your hand. No?
So Nora,
Okay.
question, to determine who the other person should be, should we have consistency here so that whoever, teams up with Chris tomorrow is also involved in the other part of the inspection with Du Bois?
I don't have any opinion. I think it's up to you. You're gonna get all of this stuff in like writing in pretty thick reports. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think what I'd say is that if someone has a background in any of these things,
I think it
It's
would
not-
bore you. If somebody really isn't into this, I think you'd really be bored.
I'm available tomorrow.
So
not next
what's
week.
the function of the folks that are going to be walking around?
You're the
just
buyer. If the
Taking
seller's
notes
there,
or?
if the seller's there, you as the buyer have to be represented, in our opinion. That's why I think it can be valuable if you have background, like if you know septics or anything related to that, anything related to engineering, contracting. It's just helpful to hear. Maybe Kurt makes a comment. Oh, 2 years ago this happened. Like that's what you want to capture, really. Obviously, these engineers are your vendors, so they're in your interest. They're going to be as thorough as possible because you're relying on this information for how you structure the deal. But they might not catch everything, and you are the residents, so
Right.
you're just going to see things that they don't.
So is there anyone on the board, Melissa, I know you've offered to help with this. Do you feel comfortable sharing that kind of a skill set? I don't know what your background is in this sort of thing.
Well, the only experience I have with septics is flushing, but
Okay.
if that's not adequate enough.
And
then
sometimes that's
by
all
all
you
means.
need.
So let me just ask, is there anyone else on the board? And I'm not trying to discount, what, you know, the enthusiasm here. We certainly want folks to step up. Is there anyone else that feels like they would be better suited to represent us as the buyers with a background in this sort of thing? Am I looking at everybody here?
Yeah.
I gotta. Okay.
Chris, you're on your own.
I do have background in this stuff. And I had plans for tomorrow. I wasn't aware of this, or I didn't pay attention. And so how much time are we talking tomorrow, Nora?
I'm not sure, to be honest. They don't, I mean, as long as it takes, I don't think they have the guy is flying out tomorrow afternoon, so it's not gonna be, you know, and tomorrow's not gonna look at septic. Really, tomorrow's gonna be the, you know, the 1,000-foot up, like, you know, initial survey and environmental component.
Is he flying up from Maryland?
Yeah, he
Okay.
is.
All right, so say 10 to 12 or 1, something like that, maybe.
Yep. And I think for this, you know, like if 3 people are interested, have at it. At the end of the day, it's kind of, I leave it up to how you want to handle it. I just want to make sure you know where to go and at what time.
Yeah, okay. Well, tell you what, I'll jump in at 10. Melissa, do you want to jump in as well? And then we've got extra coverage.
Where are we jumping? One perfect place over here?
Yes, Chris,
Yeah,
we'll meet you at one perfect place.
Peyton Place. All right. So does that sound reasonable for everyone? All right. So Janet, Melissa, Chris, Porter, 10 o'clock tomorrow with Best Engineering. So we have very limited time here. We're supposed to jump off at 7:15 for our executive. Do we have any quick questions for open forum from any of the residents or members? Questions that haven't been addressed? And if you could just raise your hand or give a shout out, and we'll try to see who's there. Oh, you're welcome, Linda. We miss you. Yes, Catherine.
I missed the last meeting and I was wondering what the update on the appraisal was. I was kind of waiting for that component to be discussed.
So the appraisal just came back in draft form.
Okay.
So it's not ready for prime time yet, but your attorney has let the seller know that you're able to move forward at this time. The market value is there, so you do not need to exit the contract as a result of it coming in under market. If you want to exit the contract in the future because of your own personal decision making, that's separate. But this was the first contingency to see if you even got an independent appraisal that was, you know, gonna bear the purchase price.
Okay, thank you so much.
And more of the actual specifics around the appraisal can like be ready for prime time, but the lenders here have said the appraisal came back like at 3 o'clock today. So they said, we did not have the data, like we don't have the time to basically dive into this and to sign off on it. So it's made final. So right now it's still draft and they don't want to like release it, but they have indicated market value.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. I appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Should we make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting?
You did have a question in the chat. I would just raise up.
How do we go about getting rid of the blue bags? We are a large community like all the other apartment complexes in Brunswick. Have to use the blue bags. Aren't our real estate taxes paying for Casella to come in and take out trash?
I would think that I mean, I guess I'm not sure, but I think large apartments that I think they rent dumpsters and pay for their own trash removal, I believe.
The
Chris,
bags are in place of having it in our taxes. That's what I understand.
Right, but we're talking about not using them at all. But
Chris-
yes, I
Chris-
think, go ahead,
Chris,
Ernie.
Chris Wilkins has his hand up too.
Yeah, so I think where this question is coming from is that Lynn Haven does have a contract with Casellas for the actual dumpsters that they use for office trash. So the stuff, the trash at the office, the trash that the barn generated, the general work trash of park maintenance went into that dumpster. But it was never like a community dumpster. But I guess we could make those arrangements, but that would require a bit more figuring out.
We would have
I've
to
been here
find a
9 years.
location to accommodate enough dumpsters for almost 300 units. And that's a lot of trash to be
Yeah, that's a lot
piled
of
up
money
in
too.
any one location.
A lot of money.
And money for dumpster rentals.
Well, in the case of trying to move forwards into executive session, let's table this for now. This is something that would come up as we move forward with the purchase or after the purchase. So I'm sorry, Donna, we don't really have a great answer for you right now. But those are the kinds of things that we would work on to help us all save money moving forward. Okay, so on that note, I don't see any other questions. We really need to jump into executive. And so folks, if you're not on the board, if you would please sign off, and thank you for attending and for your questions and your participation and your interest in this very important process.
Thank you.
And just for process, you would just take a vote to move into executive session.
Okay.
Motion to move into executive session?
Second.
All in favor?
Shall we wait until everybody else is off the Zoom call, or can we vote now?
You should vote now so it's in the open meeting.
Yeah. Just get it over with.
Is that Juniper?
I think she's voting.
It was, she's back. I think I missed somebody's hand. I'm so sorry. Can you raise your hands again to vote to move into executive session? I got you that time. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we have a few folks that are still hanging on with us. If you could, please sign off, and then we can jump into this.